So if you were to ask me what my favourite multi-effect was on the market just now from a bass, you might be surprised by the answer. It's not an actual pedal, rather it's my modular synth. We're talking here about the AE modular system I've been using for a few years now. Now, I've been using the AE modular for quite some time for drums and melodic sequences and other synth sounds really, but it can do so much just as an effects processor. Last year I actually started working with a dedicated AE modular bass effects rack for my live setup. And at Cablefest in March, I used it as my main source of effects from a bass. But to be honest, it was quite simple sounds. I was using a couple of effects pedals for my drives and octaves, and they were being fed through the modular to process it through filters. I was also doing effects in the modular like phaser, delay, reverb, and kind of wobble filter sounds. Really all quite typical concepts. But now that I'm starting work on the next album, I'm pushing this a little bit further, and I've started to really try and develop the multi-effect element of this and really embrace the things that make the modular so unique here. Because honestly, it's opened up a lot of possibilities that normal pedals just can't do. Nothing against pedals, I've got quite a big pedal collection and I'll still be using pedals. But there's just some things that this can do through the CV capabilities and the interconnectivity of the modular workflow a pedal just can't really do. So I'm kind of embracing the best of both worlds here. And since I'm going to be doing some sketching of patches, really kind of trialing ideas before I continue work on the new album, why not share some of those ideas with you? So this video is really just a snapshot of some of the sounds I've been exploring lately. Now for today's video, I'm not going to do much in the way of interconnecting with pedals. Basically, I'm embracing what the modular can do. So the only pedals you'll see are ones that aren't available currently, or I don't have them currently in the AE modular. The octave up from Gojira Effects, my Electro-Harmonix mixer pedal, which is really just doing the sending and returns from the modular, just to get the levels right and to be able to run my clean sound in parallel as well. The other two pedals are from NuX. We've got the chorus, the analog chorus, just because I don't have one of them in the modular just now, and my bass preamp, the Melvin Lee Davis bass preamp, which gives me an amp sim and cabinet emulation, basically a good DI sound from the modular through an amp sim and an impulse response cabinet simulator. From there it runs into my DBX compressor gate. The gate's barely doing anything. I'm doing a touch of compression just to shape the final sound, and then it's been recorded into the Zoom Live Track 12 behind me. I'll tell you when the drive section or the octave up are actually on in the patches, but the chorus is actually on for the whole thing, as is the amp simulation. There's a touch of drive in the NuX bass preamp, but I'll kick that on periodically and I'll tell you when it's been used. And the same goes for the clean sound in the Electro-Harmonix as well. So I think that's enough talk about all the principles. It's all fretless basses I'm using, just the Cort or my Yamaha BX5. So that's enough talking, let's start hearing some patches. So this patch is quite a simple one. This is the sub-octave into the state variable filter. Nothing crazy going on, we're just using the sub-octave module from Tangible Waves, the micro module, to get that kind of fuzz square wave sub-octave. It's not a clean octave down, it's quite gritty. It really is like it's got a fuzz built in because it really is the square wave output from that module. It is the mixed output I'm using, but we're effectively just using one octave down here. That's running into the state variable filter just to shape that sound a bit. And we're actually running the NuX preamps overdrive circuit on this one. So we're adding a bit of distortion, a little bit of overdrive on the output as well. So let's check that out now. So this next clip, we're going to use that sub-octave module again, but we're going to use the -1 and the -2. So we're going to use a combination of both of the octaves, -1 octave and -2 octaves. And that's going to be fed into the Drone X mixer, but we're really just using that as a delay. We're using the delay side of that. We're using one channel and feeding into the delay. And that's been fed into the state variable filter, and we are actually adding the overdrive on the NUX preamp again. This next patch is a little bit more intricate. This is the Drone X feeding into a bit crusher and into a filter. So we're using the delay from the Drone X, feeding into a bit crusher and into a filter, the state variable filter. And we're CV controlling the state variable filter and the bit crusher using an LFO. This is all being controlled by the heartbeat module, which is set to 50 BPM. This next one, we're going to look at a different source for our sound now, and we're using the Distortion module. This is being ran into the Stomp.io module, which is sending the sound out into that octave up pedal. It's been brought back in on the Stomp.io again. Basically, it takes a signal from the modular, converts it into a signal the pedal likes, and then it takes that signal and does the opposite to bring it back into the modular. So we've got the distortion running into the octave up via the Stomp.io, and then that's feeding into the state variable filter, which does have an LFO and an envelope generator controlling that filter with control voltage. The next one gets a little bit more tricky. We're running a parallel chain. And I'm going to read this one from my notes because there's no way I'm remembering all of this in one go. So chain number 1 is the sub-octave with -1 and -2. So 1 octave down and 2 octaves down, feeding into the phaser and then into a signal amp or a signal amplifier. Chain 2 is a distortion. So this is running in parallel from that. And that's a distortion feeding into that Stomp.io into the octave up again. And then that's feeding into half of the ring modulator module from Wonkystuff. Now the other half of the ring modulator has the micro oscillator from Tangible Waves with the frequency cranked really high feeding into that other input. So we've got a sub-octave with -1 and -2. And then that's in parallel with a ring modulator, where half of the ring modulator's input is my bass through a distortion and octave up, and the other half is that micro oscillator feeding into it. Now, the micro oscillator itself, though, is being CV controlled by the LED Chaos from BF Synth, which is a really fun, chaotic, and really unpredictable in a great way CV controller. All of that is then being mixed back together in the Mixer 4, and then it's going into a state variable filter again before it comes out of the modular. Now, the input to all of these signal chains is being done via the envelope follower module. This allows you to take the audio in and patch it into the system. It does it on an unbalanced or a balanced input, depending on what instrument you have. But it also offers the ability to be able to take envelope and gate generated from what you play and process that, or rather use that to process other sounds in your modular. A great module that is being used on every one of these patches. That's how I'm bringing sound into the modular. Now, the next patch is a lot of fun as well. This is using the grunge filter, which is being CV controlled via the LED Chaos module again from BF Synth. This is feeding into the Drone X delay, well, the Drone X mixer, and using just the delay side of things, which is then feeding into the state variable filter. So we're controlling the filter with an envelope generator triggered by an LFO. So we actually have two forms of control voltage going on here. The LED Chaos controlling the grunge filter on the input, then we're going into a delay, and then the filter on the output is being controlled by an LFO and envelope generator. So there's two filters working against each other here. And then in parallel with this, because it is quite an elaborate sound, we have the clean sound, just for a bit of definition, and it kind of balances things out well. I think it sounds pretty cool. The next one, we're using that sub-octave module, and we're just using the -1 this time. It's feeding into the distortion module and then into the grunge filter. And the grunge filter is being opened via the envelope follower, that module we're bringing sound in on, using the envelope output from that. So we're using our input, we're taking the audio from the envelope follower and using that to feed through the modular, but we're also taking that sound and using it as an envelope. We're generating an envelope signal from our playing, and we're using that to open the grunge filter. So we're able to control the shape of our filter and the shape of our notes by the way we pluck, which is pretty fun. And the NUX preamp, again, we're going to use the distortion circuit on this one. We're going to add a bit of drive after this signal chain just to grit things up a little bit more again. Now for this next patch, we're going to use that sub-octave again, and again we're going to run it into a distortion and into the grunge filter. Unlike one of the previous patches where we used the envelope output from our envelope follower, instead of that this time we're going to take the gate output and feed that into its own envelope generator with a slower attack and a slower decay, or a longer decay, instead of using just the envelope from our envelope follower. So we're able to shape that envelope a little bit more with this envelope generator to get these swells into the notes. Gives it a very different sound to how it was in that previous clip. And again for this one, the overdrive in the NUX preamp is still on. For this next one, we're going to go for a filter tremolo. Now, typically in the past, in previous videos, I made tremolo using VCAs, and that's still really easy to do. You can do that with quad VCAs, with the 2 VCA from Tangible Waves. They can do that just fine. But you can get a different voicing of tremolo if you do it with a filter. For this one, I'm running the Distortion into the Stomp.io to get that octave up effect again from the Gojira octave up. That's feeding into the state variable filter, which is CV controlled by an LFO and an envelope generator. And for this one, we're shaping the attack and the decay just slightly. We're taking those controls up just a little bit, just to get a little bit of movement on that sound, not just hard on off. It's got a little bit more finesse to it. And we're actually clocking this one with the heartbeat again, and we're controlling that using the Polyend Tracker's MIDI clock. So we're effectively sending the MIDI clock to trigger the heartbeat, and we're using the heartbeat at half the tempo of what the MIDI clock is sending. And again, for this one, the overdrive is on for the NUX preamp. Now for this one, we're going to go for a sequenced tremolo. So we're actually going to use the Distortion and that octave up via the Stomp.io again, but this time we're running into the grunge filter and then into a phaser. We're going to CV control the filter by using our 16-step sequencer. We're setting it to 8 steps, but it is the 16-step sequencer. And we're going to clock that again with a heartbeat, and that is in itself being clocked by the Polyend Tracker. Again, for this one, the NUX preamp does have its overdrive circuit on. So I hope you enjoyed those sounds. Really the big thing here is you might have noticed there's not really much in the way of ambient sounds. They're all quite in your face, distorted, wobbly, very synth heavy, synth bass heavy, and that's what I'm going for with this batch of sounds. To be honest with you, I don't have much in the way of the ambient effect in this rack for now. There's a few things I'm looking at, like the multi-effect module, the Cirrus Classic, and maybe adding another delay in there as well, because that would open up more of these types of sounds. So that will come, and I will add more sounds, another video on sounds once those effects are there. But it's more of the synth-based stuff I've been looking at today. You might also be wondering how to patch this. These are just individual patches, but how would I swap between these in a live or even studio setting? Well, I've actually done a full video on that, explaining how I did that on stage earlier this year at Cablefest. And that's what I intend to do with these again once we get to that point. That video is linked in the description, but the very quick version of this is I used a MIDI foot switch sending latching MIDI notes. That was fed in via MIDI into the MB1 module. It could also be the MD Heart from Tangible Waves, and I've embraced the MIDI or MD functionality of the AE modular. It's quite a new element to this, and there's lots of great modules out already and some amazing stuff coming soon. I used one of those modules, that was the MTR8 from Wonkystuff, which converts those MIDI notes into gate pulses, which could be used to flip-flop between VCAs, and those VCAs were basically turning on and off patches. That's the very quick version of that. Don't worry if that didn't make much sense. There's a full video explaining how all of that works linked in the description. So thank you very much for watching this. Like I say, this is just a selection of patches I've been messing around with while I'm effectively making sound sketches for the upcoming album writing. I will be updating this with some more of them once I get more ideas and once I add more modules, but this is just the things I've been working on right now. It can actually do even more than this already. This is just a very small selection of what this setup can do. So I highly recommend checking this format out as effects. Will I be getting rid of pedals? No, because there's pedals that I love using and will continue to use. There's some brands I really love what they make, and that'll never change. But I think this is a great setup to have, even alongside that, to add those less conventional sounds, or even a more intricate or interesting take on a conventional sound, because you can add CV control, you can add movement, you can add patching that pedals just can't do. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you thought of this. And if you've been doing this already, even not the AE modular, if it's Eurorack, if it's another format, let me know below, because I'm always open to new ideas and I can always take these things and apply it to this format. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit like, subscribe, all that usual stuff people ask for. If you do want to check out more of what I'm working on, whether it be music, gigs, just general content about what I'm working on, YouTube, Instagram, Bandcamp, and all the streaming sites, for the most part, Gavin Forbes Music, you'll find me there. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep working on those bass faces.